Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Hallowed Be Thy Game. Ren here, and if you're a fan of RPGs and general discussions about the games we all know and love, then you've definitely found a friend in this channel. I post at least once a week on topics from pickup videos, new releases, to just chatting about the games I've reached hallowed status in my heart. So thank you so much for watching, and today we're talking about why I love action RPGs. Let's check it out. Engaging world. Now, if an action RPG ever hopes to become hallowed in my eyes, then it has some very stiff competition to go up against. One of the most definitive ways it can set itself apart from the pack for me is if it has an engaging world full of characters that I care about. Nothing can earn my interest faster than characters that have depth and potential for growth. Whether it be the main character or party members, it is so incredible to me when the world is fleshed out and the characters are lovable. Now, even deeper than characters, I also mean that I love it when the world itself feels more than just another generic copy and pasted fantasy world. Hallowed games for me are games that have an engaging world. Now, one of the easiest ways to make a world engaging for me is for it to have some element of mystery. This is a pretty generic and broad comment, so let me see if I can explain it any better. This can be as simple as having a fun collectible system that will in some way benefit my character, whether it's combat-based, story, or even vanity-based. If I find enough of a secret item to where I can unlock a cosmetic or a cutscene, or maybe even a new moveset, then I am such a sucker for that. Now, this is all well and good, and many games do this, but mystery in a game can be used to such an even deeper extent. It can also help touch on the world building in a massive way. Game series such as the Soulsborne games, Breath of the Wild, Fable, and even Elder Scrolls do this incredibly well. I remember the first time I played Merwin, and it's early in the game, and you'll be walking down a path, and then out of nowhere, a mage will fall to his death in front of you. There's nowhere he could have fell from. It just happens. Or in Breath of the Wild, you'll see a blue glow coming from a mountain that has cherry blossoms on it at night. This level of mystery begs you to search it out, to explore where you otherwise would not have explored, or dare to fight something you never would have wanted to before. The unknown can be terrifying, as in Bloodborne, or can be tantalizing to make you answer the call in Breath of the Wild. Mystery adds history and depth to a world that otherwise would not have been achieved. And heck, J.J. Abrams has made a career off of creating mysteries only to never answer them. But I digress. Exploration, world building. Exploration in action RPGs begs to be free roaming so you can explore at will. Now, I don't mean to say that every good action RPG needs to be open world, but the concept that makes action RPGs good also lends extremely well to open exploration. The Witcher implements this philosophy, as with the Breath of the Wild and Souls games. However, one of my all-time favorite action RPG developers does not have truly open-world formats to their games, and that's Platinum. I would consider Platinum and FromSoft to be the de facto developers, to where when I see that they've created a game, I know at the very base of it that their combat will be what I'm looking for. This is similar to how I look at Atlas with turn-based RPGs. I also want to mention that Final Fantasy VII Remake is a unique and stellar action RPG that has one of the best customization systems in the genre. The materia system works so well that what it lacked in open-world exploration, it made up for in world building. The city of Midgar is alluring and filled out to where it's fascinating and helps to diminish the blow of its semi-linear exploration. And for the record, its world building is so well done, I genuinely didn't notice how linear the game appeared at times. That just goes to show what lovable characters, incredible world building, and top-notch combat progression systems can do. Combat. Well, you knew it had to be on the list. There's no getting around it. Combat is the bedrock foundation by which I judge all action RPGs. In a turn-based game, I can forego or overlook some obnoxious aspects of a combat system in favor of a great cast of characters or an engaging story. However, action RPGs are different for me. I have always placed much more emphasis on the combat mechanics over most anything else in the game. Now, before I dive further into combat, I think it's only fair to mention that in this context, I'm talking about what makes a game reach the upper echelon of games into hallowed territory. But there's no denying it. Combat is king when it comes to action RPGs. With this particular section, I want to break it down even further into the separate areas that I think are key in making an incredible combat system. First off, I love it when a combat system feels weighty. Now, what I mean by that is that when a weapon hits and combat itself works in conjunction with the sound design to make it feel like when you swing that giant two-handed sword, you've just clobbered the enemy. Or when you get punted by the giant monster you're fighting, that you just took a steel boot to the chest. Combat needs to feel engaging, and when you land that hit or take the hit, it feels impactful. Nothing is more off-putting in a video game than when you hit your super ultra mega smash ability, and it just looks and sounds like you hit the enemy with a wet noodle. Arguably the most key component for any action RPG for me is that the combat provide a challenge, that challenge is rewarding, and it has to be well balanced. It is beyond discouraging when the balance of a game is off. Let's say you have a decently challenging combat system. You're making rewarding, steady progress through the game, then the difficulty drops off into oblivion and you're just raffle stomping your way through the game. It's jarring, and the rewarding sensation quickly fades away. Or even more jarring than that is when you're playing a level and it's extremely easy, but then the boss for the level is unbelievably hard in context. When a game has a good flow and balance to the combat, then it's a glorious thing. Now, I have mentioned in the past that difficulty spikes can be useful in a game, but under the right circumstances. When a game suddenly challenges you, but it's wanting you to utilize more of your toolkit as the game is balanced from this boss onward around you using your moveset, then it's still a well-balanced game for me, and in fact, I would call that phenomenal balancing in a game. One of my favorite games for this particular level of progression is the original Dark Souls. Now, I know I've gushed about this game, but it deserves every bit of praise. Oftentimes, the difficulty of Dark Souls can be inflated to unimaginable heights, but as a whole, Dark Souls is my gold standard for what makes a hallowed action RPG. One of the reasons I love this system is because a lot of your power in the game just comes from learning how to effectively approach and fight each enemy. Eventually, you'll begin to lose your fear of once terrifying enemies because you've simply just adapted and learned how to form your perfect strategy to overcome a tough monster. Breath of the Wild is another hallowed game in my eyes, and it's because as a combat system, it's one of my favorite, breaking weapons aside. Lionels and Guardians early on strike terror into the hearts of every player. They're just top-tier trolls, and they continue to be so until you learn how to parry or utilize your bow's time-slowing mechanic. My friends, I cannot explain to you the satisfaction you can feel in Breath of the Wild when you finally parry a Guardian's death ray. Link doesn't speak in the games, but if he did, I'd be okay if he said, "Suck it," to a Guardian during a parry. In the end, what Breath of the Wild and Dark Souls provide are obnoxious enemies that can be handled rather easily if you utilize the combat systems provided to you by the developers. This is one of my all-time favorite aspects of any combat system: diversity. Having a diverse combat system is almost a must for me when it comes to action RPGs. There is no better way to get me to do a New Game Plus run than by giving me multiple ways to fight in the game. Some of us like to be two-handed, weapon-wielding warriors, some battle mages, and some like to be an archer or a sneaky rogue. Funny enough, all roads in Skyrim lead back to Stealth Archer. Variety is the spice of life, my friends, and that same is true for combat systems as well. Some action RPGs are structured in a way that you have to hard commit to one style of gameplay per run, and this used to annoy me, but it does have its benefits, as each run is a calculated endeavor to become min-maxed in that one particular style. An example of this is Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne. Because there's so few of the max upgrade materials for weapons, you have to choose carefully what you max out. However, there can also be games such as Breath of the Wild that provide you with the ability of being able to switch combat styles and still have the full effectiveness of a weapon by simply switching to that weapon. Since it's a massively open single-player action RPG, there is the freedom of that choice. All these systems work together, but the common thread is that the various playstyles they offer are all unique, diverse, and extremely satisfying. Stylish. One of the most crucial yet totally vain elements of action RPGs that can make a great game hallowed for me is if it has stylish combat. Now, Platinum Games are who I would consider to be the proverbial top of the food chain when it comes to making stylish combat systems. Metal Gear Rising and Astral Chain are some of my all-time favorites. I have mentioned before that I consider Astral Chain to be criminally underrated. Truly a masterpiece, and it has a pseudo-complex yet stylish combat system. Touching a little bit on my previous point in diversity of combat being important, Astral Chain sets the mold for me in providing immediate access to different combat styles. At the touch of a button, your character can become a shooting machine, a one-handed baton-wielding savage, or, and this one's my favorite, a two-handed axe-cladded monster absolutely devastating your opponents with poise-breaking hits. All of it has style and flair. That is so crucial in keeping me coming back for more and more. All of these points work together, but when a game can pull off the other aspects of combat and having stylish combat to add on top of it, that's the cherry on top. Action RPGs are like a fine mixture, and all of this works together to comprise one of my favorite genres in gaming. Yeah, as we close, I just want to share my final thoughts. When I decided I wanted to explore what it is about action RPGs that have reached hallowed status in my heart, I knew I wanted to look at the common elements between all action RPGs that I've fallen in love with. In doing this, it got me curious as to what others thought on the subject, so I took to the Twitterverse to see what the community had to say, and I got some incredible answers that I want to share. At Crisco Play says, I love the ones that give me different ways to play. For example, skill-based, tank, DPS, support, and stealth. But I can also appreciate the simpler ones that just focus on action and power. I also like it when action RPGs have puzzles that break up the action. At Jamie A. McAndrew says, I tend to always go with a thief or archer in character creation. Just always preferred sneaking, lockpicking, and a silver tongue than bashing people over the head with a mace or great swords. Can always get an NPC to be my tank. At Defy026 says, I like the freedom of running around an enemy and finding their weak points, the environments, atmosphere, Bloodborne, music, story, and just overall want to grind levels. At Wing0T says, honing my reflexes. I love the challenge of just getting good instead of relying on levels. Amen to that. At Zeduk Zud, please forgive me for pronunciation, your post just reminded me of how much I want to replay Bloodborne. Now, if FromSoft could do a performance-enhancing patch for the PS5, that would be just fantastic. To actually answer your question, I really love the challenge in learning a boss's attack pattern and overcoming them. Absolutely. And yes, please, FromSoft, make that happen. At Sixside, I enjoy a good and immersive game. The combat can be challenging, but that's what makes it fun. Absolutely. At Forest Review says, I think for me it's the challenge action RPGs have that strive me to get better at it. It feels like you're in the game fighting for survival. That's how it feels for me, and fun you have while learning new skills in order to progress and make it a fun genre. At Red Soul Walker says, for me a lot rides in the world and atmosphere. A satisfying combat system is great, but even the best combat can't keep me going if I don't enjoy exploring the land and feeling immersed from the sound, music, and art style. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching to the end of today's video. And I also want to thank all those who responded to my Twitter post. I had a blast reading them, and you're absolutely right. All these things work together. Like this video if you like it. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so we can keep hanging out in the future. And until then, I'll see you guys next time.